Room is an ingeniously well-constructed film. This movie, no relation to The Room, because that had to be said, is a 2015 Lenny Abrahamson drama and thriller starring Brie Larson as a young woman named Joy. In the movie, Joy has been kidnapped and forced to live in a singular room for many years, and during that time she gave birth to a boy named Jack, who was fathered through non-consensual sex via Joy's captor. By the time the film begins, Joy has been in that earlier mentioned singular room for over 7 years, and her son Jack is 5 years old. And during that time, the two make the most of their life in captivity, all until they both get the idea to escape, a development that ultimately sets the stage for a terrific cinematic experience, and one that upends our traditional understanding of an abduction and escape narrative or style of thriller. See, most movies with this type of subject matter focus about captives escaping from their captors and confronting their traumatic experiences head on, and once those aforementioned characters escape, those movies tend to cut to the end credits as soon as those characters receive their happy ending and are reunited with their loved ones. But Room is different, because honestly the whole great escape within this movie is not the sole focus here. Like, do not get me wrong, Joy hatches a great scheme to get Jack out of the room and for him to ultimately get help, which is very thrilling in and of itself. Yet with that said, in Room, the whole escape aspect of the plot occurs within the first half of the movie, whereas the second half is about how Jack and Joy recover from their trauma and how Joy in particular has PTSD, which is just such an interesting angle that is all too often unexplored within this genre. Like through Joy and Jack, Room explores what happens after the instigating traumatic event that traumatizes these characters, and what the film ultimately details is compelling in and of itself. The movie fascinatingly portrays the perspective of a young boy being introduced to a whole wide world after only knowing the existence of one room for his entire life up to that point, which is an interesting journey and development of character by itself. And then the film also showcases the perspective of a woman who is having severe PTSD, a woman who, while grateful for escaping and being back in the real world, feels an intense sense of loss over the time that she lost during captivity, and now that she's back in the real world, she wonders why things don't entirely feel 100% better. And that's fascinating, mostly because it's relatable for many of us with PTSD. Like, speaking for myself, as a transgender woman with PTSD over how my body changed into a masculine version of myself, whereas I desired for a more feminine one, undergoing hormone replacement therapy helped me confront my trauma, but it also, unfortunately, didn't negate it entirely. In fact, despite improvements, things aren't perfect or optimal for me. There's still pain and loss, both in regards to how many of the changes my body made during puberty are irreversible, and also because I feel like the time I spent as a fake masculine version of myself is time that I can never get back. I have a sense of loss that I carry with me, and that's relatable to Joy's PTSD in Room, because while Joy escaping from her captivity was an improvement for her, Joy will never get back the time she lost. She will always carry a considerable amount of pain, and ultimately Room is about a woman and her son trying to overcome that pain, to cope with it, to live with it. And for that, I love this movie, mostly because as a film, despite the tough subject matter, Room offers a lifeline of hope, because PTSD may take up space in our minds, but that said space doesn't need to define us. When it comes to our complex, multi-layered psyche, trauma is just but one room. And with that, that was the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like rating, share, subscribe, ring the bell, and leave a comment telling me what you thought of Room and this video essay. Additionally, please consider checking out my Patreon page. $1 a month gets you under this credit sequence, and $5 a month allows you to make requests for movies that I can watch and talk about on the Riley and Friends podcast. The link to my Patreon is in the description. And speaking of Patreon, I just want to thank my patrons, particularly my high tier ones in Samantha Devlin, Mom, and Morgan. Thank you so much for supporting what I do. Love y'all.